agenda, I'm actually not going to reveal the topic just yet because our little trivia question today is about our topic, so I don't want to give it away. But it's going to be an exciting all things farm class. Our class rules, as usual, we're going to be respectful of one another. We're going to speak one person at a time so we can all hear what each other are saying. We're going to mute ourselves if we've got background noise and we're not speaking. And we're going to keep our video on even if we're not on the screen so we can see everyone's faces and know that you're there. Announcements. I have an announcement. The compost pile at the farm is doing so well. It is steaming every morning when I get to the farm, so it's really nice and active. And another announcement, we put the baby chickens in with the big chickens yesterday, so now they're going to be cohabitating, living together, so hopefully all that goes well. All right, so today's check-in trivia question. Can plants grow without soil? Can plants grow without soil? So today's lesson is all about hydroponics, which is a way of growing plants by not using soil. So there's our answer to the question. Plants can be grown without soil, surprisingly. So hydroponics is a way of growing plants not in soil, but by bathing the plant's roots in a mixture of water and nutrients and vitamins and minerals and all the things that the plant needs. So instead of having the soil to carry all of those nutrients and the water, there's just a stream of water or a tub of water that holds everything the plant needs. It's kind of a very scientific deal though. That's why I have the picture of the scientist and all the test tubes. It takes a lot of measurement and careful monitoring to make sure that everything is just right and the plants have everything they need. Because if you have most of what the plant needs, but it's missing out on one nutrient, the plant still can't grow. All of those pieces have to be there. Who invented hydroponics? A little bit of a history lesson here. So the very first hydroponic gardens that we know of, like way back, like 600 BC, were the hanging gardens of Babylon and the floating gardens of China. So like before modern history, people were already using solutions of water to feed plants instead of using soil in Babylon and China. But in the 1920s in California, a guy named William F. Garrick showed how plants could be grown in a solution of water as long as that water contained all the essential nutrients. And so he was a scientist at the University of California. So the people in Babylon and China way back in the day had figured hydroponics out, but William Garrick kind of made it into a science in 1920. So that's when it really started getting documented and written down. And that's when people started becoming more familiar with hydroponics. What nutrients do plants need? First, the big three that plants need is carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen. Carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen. And those are the three things that most living things are all made of. So you and me, Arlie, the plants outside, the goats, the chickens, we're all mostly made of carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen. Next up, after those big three are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, which is like the middle three. Those are also really important. Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium are all very important things that plants need. And then below that is kind of like the small three, calcium, magnesium, and sulfur. And so these are starting to get into the nutrients that plants only need a teeny tiny amount of. And after that, chlorine, iron, etc., a lot of other things. So this pyramid shows the amount of each of these nutrients that plants need. So the stuff at the top, like our carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen, those are the things that the plants need the most of. And then the things at the bottom, the chlorine, iron, calcium, magnesium, those are things that plants only need a little bit of. So where do these nutrients come from, and what do they do for the plants? Let's find out. So carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen are from the air and the water. We don't usually think about these as being nutrients for the plants because water and air are just generally all over the place, right? We don't generally have to give the plants any special attention for them to get their carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen because they mostly just do that by themselves. But the carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen are the building blocks of all life. So those are still really, really important. Next up, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. These can come from compost. They can come from fertilizer. Some plants even have the special ability to catch nitrogen out of the air and fix it into the tissues, right? That's what we call legumes. We talked a little bit about that in our cover crop lesson. All right, and so the nitrogen's main function in the plant is to help the plant grow big, strong leaves. So if you want your plant to grow big, strong leaves, you got to make sure it has nitrogen. So we talked about nitrogen. Nitrogen's important for plants with big, strong leaves. Phosphorus is really important for plants to have energy and to grow their flowers. And potassium is really important for the plant to grow big, strong roots. So this time of year, for example, people who fertilize their grass in their yard, the focus going into winter is to have really nice, thick, deep roots. So people right now are probably fertilizing their grass with mostly potassium, so the roots can go big and strong. Calcium, magnesium, sulfur, chlorine, iron, and all of the other micronutrients are just small things that help keep the plant healthy and protect them from disease. So those micronutrients just help keep plants healthy. And those micronutrients can come from the soil. They can come from special fertilizers that only contain the micronutrients. So yeah, those are all the nutrients that the plants need, the big important ones. Moving right along. All right, so we're gonna pause to watch a YouTube video about the different types of hydroponic systems.
Plants grown hydroponically are not planted in conventional soil, unlike so many other agricultural crops. Instead, the roots are submerged in an inorganic growing medium. Nutrient-rich matter is then applied to the roots of the plant. This is the basis for any hydroponic setup. You might be thinking how a plant can survive, and even thrive, without soil. To understand how hydroponically grown plants develop and mature, you need to understand the purpose that soil serves in supporting the life of a plant. One of the most important functions of soil is its ability to retain water and nutrients and supply these to the roots of the plant. In hydroponics, this need is overcome by placing the plant in an inorganic growing medium, like vermiculite, perlite, rockwool, or an expanded clay substrate. Alternatively, the plants can also be placed in a simple container without any substrate or float on the water itself. The nutrient demands of the plants are then met through regular applications of a nutrient solution to the root zone of the plant. A beginner can get easily confused and overwhelmed with all the variations of the hydroponic method. So, let's take a look at the different hydroponic applications that you can try out. 1. The nutrient film technique. In this,
I want you guys to pay extra close attention to this nutrient film technique, or NFT, because we actually have a setup for this at the farm that I'm working on. So pay extra close attention to NFT.
Setup, plants are placed in sloping hollow pipes or channels. Nutrified water is continuously pumped through the channels over the root system. There is no need for additional growing medium like vermiculite or rockwool. The NFT is a closed system that recirculates water throughout the channels by pumping it first to the upper or higher ends of the channels that then flows down the slope. 2. Wick systems. This is one of the simplest hydroponic setups and is perfect for beginners. A reservoir of nutrient-enriched water is placed underneath the plants. There is a wick that extends from the growing medium downwards into the reservoir. The water moves through capillary action from the reservoir into the growing medium and keeps the roots nourished and moist. Little specialist equipment is needed for this design, and it is very easy to DIY with some buckets, rope and a drill. 3. Ebb and flow. Also known as the flood and drain system, plants embedded in a growing medium are placed over a reservoir filled with nutrient water. A pump periodically forces the water up into the section housing the plants. The pump is then turned off and the water gradually flows back into the reservoir. This is another simple technique, and apart from the pump and piping, little expert equipment is required for success. 4. Deep water culture. Here, plants are placed in pots with growing media or lightweight covers that float on the water's surface. The plant's roots then grow into the water. A pump oxygenates the water to keep the roots healthy, but apart from that, no other mechanization is required. This makes the deep water culture system great for beginners or DIY projects. 5. Drip systems. This technique makes use of drip lines and a pump that transports water from an underlying reservoir into the growing media encasing the plants above. Usually, a dripper will be allocated to each plant, which allows for the fine-tuning of nutrient concentrations and watering intensity. The water can be recycled, which saves time and money, or it can be siphoned out the system, which maintains the optimal nutrient concentrations in the reservoir. 6. Aeroponics. Here, plants are suspended in the air vertically or horizontally. A pump then delivers a misting of nutrient media to the roots of the plants at scheduled intervals or on a continuous basis, depending on the needs of the plant. This is a more advanced system requiring pumps, misters and timers, among other equipment, and should only be considered by expert growers to make the investment worthwhile. No matter the type of hydroponics system you decide on, you will always have to consider the advantages and disadvantages before you start your production. Let's start with the positives of growing plants hydroponically. Firstly, you can set up a hydroponic operation, big or small, almost anywhere. Because no soil is needed, you can grow a considerable number of plants indoors even. You can maximize your yield because the roots of hydroponically grown plants are kept compact. This is possible because when they are provided with the perfect amount of water and nutrients, roots do not need to grow in search of more. You will also be free from the constraints of poor soil conditions and environmental pollutants, allowing you to grow almost any herb or leafy vegetable anywhere. The money saved on water and nutrient inputs is another advantage offered to hydroponic growers. In conventional agriculture, most of the water and nutrients applied to the plants is lost through drainage, runoff, and evaporation. In hydroponics, this problem is overcome by applying only the exact amount of water and nutrients needed by the plants. The savings are further improved in circulatory hydroponics systems, as the same water is pumped through the system over and over again. Hydroponic systems also allow you to overcome the constraints imposed by a change of season. Climate-controlled systems allow the grower to fine-tune the temperature and lighting to suit the needs of their plants. This can open up the possibility of producing crops in their off-season, which can ensure you receive a premium for your harvest and limit the need for expensive and polluting international air freight. The climate control also means that plants grow faster. Because you can alter the environmental conditions as needed, the plants can always be provided with the optimal conditions for growth. The lack of soil will also eliminate any soil-borne diseases or weed infestations. If this problem is solved, then the money spent on the usual control methods will no longer be required. The labor and time spent mitigating pest and weed problems will also be removed. These savings can either be reinvested into expanding production, or it will result in improved profit margins. Furthermore, the plants will be less susceptible to soil-borne pathogens and will not need to compete with weeds for water or nutrients. Lastly, you will be able to change crops or cultivars easily and quickly if market demand fluctuates away from or towards certain products. You will therefore be able to keep up to date with consumer trends and meet demands as they arise. It is easy to see why hydroponics is a favorite among commercial growers and hobbyists alike. However, there are some obstacles that every grower needs to consider before they start. While a small, backyard setup may not be too costly, the startup costs of a commercial hydroponics operation will be expensive. You will therefore need to make sure that you have a solid business plan and contingencies in case of unforeseen obstacles. This may be a barrier for small-scale farmers who cannot afford the initial investment or be approved for the necessary loans. Relating to the expenses of setting up a hydroponic production, you will need the expertise and experience required to make a commercial setup a success. You do not want to waste money on mistakes and mishaps that could have been easily prevented with the correct experience. This is less of an issue for hobbyists, as making mistakes and learning from them is all a part of the hydroponics experience. Lastly, and this is especially so for large, electric-powered systems, the risk posed by power and water outages is a big one. Because the roots of the plants are not anchored in water-retaining soil, prolonged periods without water or nutrient applications will be devastating and result in large-scale losses. It is therefore wise to invest in generators and boreholes if you are a commercial grower. In conclusion, there are so many benefits of growing your plants hydroponically. If you are interested in starting a backyard, small-scale operation, then do not hesitate. However, if you are looking to go big or expand your production, more time and thought will be needed in developing a business strategy, a budget and contingency plan before you take that leap. Thank you to everyone who has made it to the end of the video.
All right, so the two main types of hydroponics are nutrient film technique and deep water culture, which I have here on the slides. There's lots and lots of different types of hydroponics, but these are the two main ones that people use. So nutrient film technique is the one that I told you to pay extra close attention to. That's the one we're going to set up here at the farm. And it uses a pump with water solution with nutrients in it. And that water just constantly flows downhill past the roots and gets recirculated around. So there's always water flowing past the roots. The containers can look like gutters. So they're big, long troughs. You know, like how the gutters collect rainwater at the top of our house. That's kind of what the containers look like. And they've got holes in the top to set the plants down into. A negative thing about nutrient film technique is that it's really expensive to buy all the equipment that you need to make it work. The system that was donated to the farm from a very nice person, I think it was worth like $3,000 at least. They're really expensive. Deep water culture is a lot more simple. Plants sit in a tub of water and nutrients. So there's not water constantly flowing past the roots. The roots are growing down into the water. The plants are kind of floating on top and the roots are reaching down into the water. And containers look more like a tub, you know, like those storage containers. Kind of like that tub that's down there in the corner. That's more of what the containers usually look like. I've got another video to show you guys of kind of like a DIY setup for this deep water culture, because I know that we have some do-it-yourselfers here on our video call, particularly Blake. I know you like to build things. So let's check out do-it-yourself deep water culture.
Hey everyone, my name's Taylor with Green Our Planet, and today we're going to be putting together a deep water culture hydroponic system. The way a water culture hydroponic system works is that you have a reservoir filled with water, then you mix your nutrients right into this reservoir. We're going to fill this right to the top to where our plants. We've started in a coconut coir plug, and we're going to be using some Hydroton expanded clay pellets to fill in around those plugs and plant these into a 2-inch net cup. This net cup is going to be suspended with the roots hanging in our nutrient solution and the leaves and stems growing out up above it, where we would want this either out in a nice sunny area, or ideally you would be using this system indoors under a grow light where
He's got a really nice diagram here of how the deep water culture works. So like I said, the plant is sitting or floating on some type of lid or a piece of foam, anything that's going to stay right on top of the water. And then the roots are growing down into the water that has the nutrients in it.
you'll have control of your climate and lighting schedule and everything like that. Pretty simple to make here. We've got a 10-gallon tote we're going to use an air pump because in a deep water culture, since the roots are always in water and there's not oxygen around the roots, we need to actually aerate the water and dissolve oxygen into the water. We've got an air stone and some silicone airline tubing. We have created 2-inch holes for our net cups to slide right through. Most totes come with a flat lid and you can cut the holes right on top. For this particular style, the store I went to, they changed the style they're carrying, and it comes with a raised lid, which wouldn't be ideal for deep water culture, but what I've done here is flip this lid over so that it fits right in the container, and our roots will be down here where they need to be in the nutrient solution. To put these holes in the lid, we've used a 2-inch hole saw on the end of our electric drill. You want to have enough space for your plants to reach a mature size, and then we use this drill here and drill out our holes for the lid. So let's set it up. It's actually pretty quick to do. We're going to take our air pump, whatever kind you pick up works for you. If your water is really warm, you might want to add more air stones because warm water is going to hold less dissolved oxygen than cold water. So cold water will actually retain more oxygen. And also, the deeper your stone is placed in the tank, the more oxygen will dissolve as the bubbles rise through the water. So it's good to have a deep tank. You don't want to go too shallow on these. So as you can see there, pretty simple. We slid our silicone tubing onto one end of the air stone, and we're going to place that in the center of our tote. We'll then take the other end of this air line, and this silicone tubing, you can use just a regular pair of scissors if you need to trim the length. You'll be able to cut this to whatever length is desired or needed for your pump to plug in. The other end of this tubing we just secure to our air pump, which we then plug in. And as you can see, that's going to start bubbling away in our container.
So one difference here between the nutrient film technique and the deep water culture is that in NFT, you have a water pump that's moving water, but in deep water culture, since there's no moving water, you have to use an air pump to get oxygen into the water. So in NFT, you've got a water pump, but deep water culture, you've got an air pump in the water.
As those bubbles rise through, they're going to dissolve oxygen into the water. And at this point, we're going to fill up our container the rest of the way with nutrient solution, and then we'll be ready to add the plants. So come back in just a minute and we'll show you what we've got. Okay, so we've mixed our nutrient solution. 1 teaspoon per gallon is what we tend to follow with the MaxiGrow General Hydroponic Fertilizer.
All right, so Blake, are you still there? Okay.
Yes, I am.
Okay, cool. So he said he uses something called MaxiGrow, and if you'll notice, whenever he mixed it in, the water was still really nice and clean and clear looking. So the hydroponic fertilizers are gonna leave your water really nice and clear and clean and give the plants only exactly what they need. Does that answer your question from earlier?
Yes.
Okay.
That's cool.
1 teaspoon per gallon is what we tend to follow with the MaxiGrow General Hydroponic Fertilizer. And now we're ready to add our plants in. As I mentioned, we've got seeds sprouted in coconut pods, which we have a video on that if you need to see how to sprout seeds in your planting cubes for your systems. We filled in around these planting plug with expanded clay pellets, also called Hydroton. And we've planted them into this 2-inch net cup here. We're going to be putting our lid in here. And we will slide this air tube through one of the holes and center it in the middle of the tub over there. You could also drill a separate hole for your air stone if you'd like. And we'll put our last plant in there. Our net cups are going to be reaching the water so that our planting cube, our roots will be in the nutrient solution. You can see that the air bubbles are rising and keeping the air oxygen rich. At this point, we'll want to either introduce this system to a setting where it has a lot of bright daylight or is under a grow light that we can control and manage to provide light for the plants to photosynthesize and continue growing now that they have all the water and nutrients they need down below. Quite a simple system to put together, pretty inexpensive, and it only takes a short amount of time to build. These are a really fun, really easy to use system for hydroponics. Great for classrooms, great for homes.
So that was a really cool video of that guy showing us a deep water culture do-it-yourself system. So if you guys wanted to at home, you could build that yourself along with help of your staff. So let's move on. What type of plants grow well in hydroponics? If you noticed, all of the videos and pictures that you saw were things like leafy greens, lettuce, herbs, anything smallish. You know, we don't want a super big plant in a hydroponic system. Anything small where the leaves are the most important part of the plant. So the system that we have here at the farm that was donated to us, it's from Hydro, which is a really big hydroponic equipment company here in the United States. So the steps in that system before you get to harvest your greens, after getting your system all set up, which I'm still doing, it's not all the way set up yet. I'm missing some pieces. I have some things to figure out. First step is, of course, planting seeds into a little growing medium cube, right? And they're usually made of decomposable foam or rock wool or something like that. And you plant the seed down in the cube, the seed sprouts, and it spends about 2 weeks in a propagation station, or like at our farm, we have a seedling room. So the seeds are going to spend about 2 weeks in the seedling room until they start to get a little big. They're going to get like this tall. And then when the seedlings are big enough, they're going to go from there into the nursery channels of the Hydro system, which have holes really close together. So you're not wasting a lot of space with these teeny weeny plants. And then after about 2 weeks in the nursery channels, when they get a little bit bigger, you know, they're going to be about the size of my fist probably. You're going to take them out of the nursery channels and move them into the finishing channels. And the holes there are further apart so the plants can spread out and get bigger. And then they're going to stay in those finishing channels until they're ready to harvest. And that's the end of the slideshow. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to join Zoom on my phone. And then we're going to go look at the system that I have set up.
And this is what our hydroponic system is going to look like. Can you guys see that? These two channels here, like I said, are the nursery channels. So the plants, when they're teeny tiny, go into these holes that are all close together. And then when they get too big for these channels, they get moved over into the finishing channels where the holes are further apart and the plants have plenty of room to grow. And so how this is going to work, here's the seeding medium that I was talking about. These are the seed cubes. So the seeds get started in here. And then once the plants get, I don't know, probably about that tall, they're going to go into the nursery channels. And then when they get bigger, they're going to go into the finishing channels. Yeah. So here is a big tank that's going to hold all of our water with the nutrients in it. Inside the tank, there's going to be a pump that's going to carry water up out of the tank. And there's going to be a tube that goes all the way up here, little tubes that are going to feed that water into the tops of each of these channels. So there's going to be a water supply at the top of all these. And if you'll notice, this is kind of facing downhill. So the water starts here and trickles downhill. And so the water is going to go down, 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 down. And then it's going to come out of the ends of these tubes. And there's going to be a collection channel here, which is going to catch that water and it's going to funnel it back down into the tank. So this is kind of an optional extra part of the system. This is called IntelliDose. And what it does is it monitors the water for you, the amount of nutrients in the water, the acidity of the water. If you need more of nutrient solution A, it's gonna pump more nutrient solution into the water. If you need more nutrient solution B, it's gonna pump more of that into the water. If your pH is too high, it's gonna pump something in there to neutralize your pH. All right, guys, I'll see you next Wednesday for All Things Farm again.
Thank you, Mallory.
Thanks,
Bye,
Mallory.
guys.
Bye,
Bye.
Mallory.